Mizuho just hiked its price target on Square to a street high of $300 and reiterated it as a top buy. They're saying that Square's Cash App is aging, quote, like a fine wine, more like a champagne. They're adding new customers much faster than expected and growing in areas of the country that were previously dominated by rival Venmo. Square's up about 2% today, but it has been an absolute monster. It's up more than 200% on the year, Kate. I mean, they're a little late. This reminds me a little bit of the Adam Jonas call on Tesla yesterday. But, hey, I guess everybody's realizing the world is Square's oyster at this point, right?
Yeah, 60% upside for this price target. And one of the interesting trends here, I think, was that Google search data, that they said that they are taking market share from Venmo and Square originally. And they did similar data a couple of years ago, and it was really big in Mississippi and in the South. If they're able to take some of that market share in these bigger cities, these coastal cities like San Francisco and New York, that could be a big deal. It's also a lot more profitable than Venmo, and it used to sort of be a side project. Now every analyst on the street seems to be way more focused on the Cash App than that seller business.
Bob, where are you on the payment apps? I mean, we've talked about the monster performers in stocks like MasterCard and Visa for literally the past decade, and I wonder if Square, if we're passing the baton, and these are the payment stocks of the future.
Well, just look at the performance. It's not 200%. Square's up close to 300%. PayPal's, I don't know, half that. And PayPal's flattened out for months now. Square just keeps on going. I find that Cash App that Kate was talking about very interesting because it looks like they're diversifying away from the instant deposits, which is where all the money used to come from. They're now talking about Bitcoin in this. So they're really disruptive. They're moving really fast to get into the kind of businesses and areas that people want to get into. So as of now, it looks like Square is much hipper than Visa or MasterCard to me.
I agree. And Dom, this is one where I don't really have any direct experience. I mean, I use Venmo. I use Zelle undergirding, kind of using the Chase app to pay people at other banks all the time. But I feel like I guess by the time I adopt it, the run's going to be over.
Well, I mean, it's more the concept, right? You and everybody else out there are using these types of fintech products even more and more. For me, when I look at a company like Square, it seems to me like I'm surprised that nobody has talked about acquiring it yet. Right? And maybe that's kind of the reason it's baked into the stock price the way it is. But this notion here that Square is operating as a platform for doing this kind of transaction seems to me at some point like a banking institution or a much larger payments company or fintech company will look to buy them. I mean, for Square, I tend to use a lot more of these things now during the pandemic. It's one of those habits I think sticks after this is over.
Yeah, it was always kind of the also-ran company. When we talk about Jack Dorsey, it was always about Twitter first, and it feels to me like this is changing, and maybe he's relieved at that as well. So let's stick with payments, guys, because for the first time, everything from concessions to retail is going cashless at this year's Super Bowl. It's part of the NFL's partnership with Visa. Fans who attend the game can use credit cards or apps. If they do bring cash, there are reverse ATMs throughout that will convert it into gift cards. The NFL told CNBC going cashless was already in the works, but COVID-19 sped up that timeline. Dom, my first thought was, I guess that means the Super Bowl is going to have fans actually there, but sure enough, it's in Tampa. I guess they can be around 20% capacity, so that's 13,000 people.
And it's not just that. I mean, so if you're going to go, I thought to myself, how many people are really going to be there? But then you broaden it out thematically speaking. One of the big stats that stands out during this kind of whole presentation of why they're going cashless is how much more people spend when they do it on a card versus shelling out cash. According to Visa and the NFL, it's like 25% more at concessions when they use like some kind of contactless or swipe type payment. People just tend to spend more when it's not shelling out their own cash and counting bills out. It's also one of those reasons why personal finance experts say if you want to control your budgets, use cash, don't use cards because you can track it better. For me, though, this whole notion of getting more cashless actually is a good thing, because if you can get more of these types of technologies for reverse ATMs, you can start to serve the very underbanked population, not just here in the U.S., but around the world as well. It means everybody can get a card at some point, so they don't have to have that cash around.
Yeah, it seems like it was only a matter of time before we all go.
Cash, it's free money. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I mean, this is part of a process that's been going on for years. I mean, basically in China, they're already practically cashless. You walk up and, my understanding is you go into Beijing and try to hand somebody cash, they'll look at you like you're like you're crazy at this point. So what does Visa get out of this? First off, they get more revenues, number one. Number two, it seems to me they get really valuable insight into consumer behavior, which I bet you they're going to be sharing with the NFL. The thing that makes me very nervous about this whole thing is just the trend towards exactly them knowing everything about us. Art Cashin, for years, I've been going out with Art for 20 years. He pays cash at every place we've ever been because he doesn't like people knowing exactly what they're doing. That's essentially what he's doing. That's essentially what we're giving up at this point. But nobody seems to be fighting it too much, at least.
Rooney, quick last word on this.
This is great for Visa. They've been a crusader in sort of getting rid of cash. And if you can get people to physically take cash and put it back into a prepaid debit card, they're going to make more money on these swipes. And like Bob said, the spending data could be huge for the NFL. They want to see what people are doing when they're actually in the stadium. And financial data is a big part of that.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.